Welcome to the weekly Blue Room. We're back in action. Everton are back in action, ready to play against Arsenal this weekend. But since we haven't played in a couple of weeks now, which we're all desperate to see some more action, maybe get a point or two when we get back to play, a lot's been going down at the club that's obviously not specifically related to the football. There's lots to talk about with this. There's a lot to unpack with this. There's loads of different stuff we're going to be doing with this, with various journalists who are able to help us, go with a bigger light and shine it against what's going on with Everton's ownership. But first, I should have mentioned this, Les and Pete, as sort of always, it seems us on a regular podcast with us now, doesn't it, these days, lads?
Yeah, in good company, aren't we? Can't
That's
complain.
it. Well, yeah, I mean, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see all of our faces. You can see mine for the first time in several. But also, Pete's got all sorts over his face. You want to explain why, Pete?
I've been painting a house for with my brother, which is unfortunately right by Anfield. So I'm gonna have to go to church later and get the holy water. I think get a bath in the holy water because I'm a bit too close for comfort for my life.
A bit like.
Yeah, I don't like to be around there for too long. So yeah, I've got paint all over me. Basically. So
yeah, well, first thing I said we were talking about here is what's going on at the club, and seems to be a continuing issue that doesn't seem to go away. One attempted company to try and take some money out of us, put some money into us, should I say, was MSP. Several weeks ago, they decided to say no, walk away from Everton. Can't blame them, really, can you? But the one that's come back, one that was linked to us initially, is called 777 from Miami. Contrary to, well, there's various reports about this. One that I got from the BBC, or you'll have seen in the BBC, is that they're on the verge, or they're about to sign some papers that basically make them investors of Everton. And there's other who I've spoken to, I'm going to do a big interview with tomorrow, who said that this is otherwise, and it's quite far away from being finalised, really. So it depends who you believe by whatever thing you've read or heard from. But coming to you first about this, Les, these don't look like the best gang that you want to associate with your football club when you look at reports from being. I mean, we're all used to it, aren't we? Doing protests against the owners, as you know, at Sevilla. It is Sevilla, isn't it? They there,
Yeah,
and Hertha Berlin as well, and Vasco da Gama too. They don't seem like the best guys in the world to sign up your football club out, do they?
no, I mean, the thing is, when you get to this level, everyone's murky, aren't they? Everyone's got some sort of offshore accounts. Everyone's a little bit dodgy. You don't become a billionaire by being nice and doing things legitimately. That's just how it works, isn't it? The thing with me is, it's like, so they've got, I think they've got shares in all of those clubs, haven't they, that you mentioned? Everton potentially could be a full buyout, but obviously there's been question marks over whether they got the money for that. But you mentioned Seville, all their teams up for sale, isn't it? Their entire squad. Now this is a team that's won 5 European trophies or something in the last 8 years or something.
Ridiculous records on Europa League, haven't they?
Yeah, so so they should be in a much better place than us, and their squad's up for sale. I just read before, like Genoa's training ground, they're putting a bond issue out, aren't they, to fund Genoa's training ground. So they're getting the fans to club in. I'm sure that would go down well at Everton if someone came in and ordered a whip round, like to buy some players. I don't know. It's just we just don't know much about them, do we? I mean, we read stuff like the fellas. One of them's been in prison or something for cocaine trafficking or something. Apparently it was, but apparently the laws around that is if you get caught in someone, you can say you're trafficking it. So I think it might be a little bit exaggerated, that story. You might not have got sent down in this country for it. That's what I've heard. But even so, it's a little bit on top, isn't it? It's just very, very murky, and you kind of feel like if Moshiri does just want to get out, he's not gonna have the club's or the fans' best interest at heart, is he? He's gonna want to get whatever he can. Everton was a lost leader anyway. The big idea was to sort the ground, but it's gone horribly, horribly wrong on the pitch, which has meant, we're not, we should be getting excited about moving to this new ground. It should be like, this is it. This is going to elevate us to a next level. But things are that bad that it's not playing out like that. So you can see why maybe he wants to cut his losses. He's probably getting sort of, pulled from one side or another to cut those losses because they're not necessarily his losses to cut, if you get what I mean. But yeah, I just don't feel whatever happens, it's going to be a great deal for Everton, or the fans especially.
Yeah, I mean, when you first start reading about this group, you don't have to dig too much to find out the kind of things that they've been doing. It looks like a typical Everton situation, doesn't it? With owners, the Ken Wright situation. Look at all the mess we had with Peter Johnson and stuff like that. These guys look right up their street, don't they, Pete? And the thing about it gets to me, and that we're so desperate to get this sort of thing carried out. But it's just a typical Everton fashion that, like Les mentioned, Mercedes doesn't really care who he lets this go to as long as he gets his return for what he's owned this club for what now, 17 years. That's the most concerning thing for me. Add to that the fact that on the pitch we've gone to shit. Looks like, again, and people will typically say this is natural for me to say it, as I always do. The things are in trouble for Everton. I'm not too positive about things with the club, but it looks to me, the way things are, we're going to be in another relegation fight. That happens, that'll have been 3 years on the spin. Then you're bringing in an ownership that, on paper and what other clubs have experienced, doesn't look the type of group that you want in to make things any better under Farhad Moshiri. Is there anything you see from this? You're the main person I know, Pete, as being the most positive person. What do you see from this that makes you feel any better than what Les has just said?
I don't see any positives whatsoever. I
Oh,
really
it's
do.
been
I
broken pieces as well.
I really genuinely don't see any positive whatsoever with 777. I think that other fan groups and other clubs have spoken out about them, as you've already mentioned. They seem to me more like asset strippers rather than people who want to come into a football club and progress them.
Yeah.
I don't see them as being the type of group that I want us anywhere near. I think if Moshiri was to sell to them, there's been a lot of empty words spoken by Farhad Moshiri since he's come into Everton Football Club. A lot of empty words in terms of, we don't want this to be a museum. We need a striker in January. We'll get one. We got one 6 months later. There's been a lot of empty words. And when Farhad Moshiri first came to Everton Football Club, the way he spoke about the club and the fact that and the respect he had for the club and the institution of Everton Football Club, I would hate to see those be proven to be empty words as well. I think that anyone who takes over the reins at Everton Football Club has got such a responsibility to ensure that this football club survives and that it is progressing in the right way and the right manner. It also means that if you're in charge or if you own this football club, you've got to think of the legacy of the football club long term. You can't just be cutting and running and selling to the highest bidder and not care. I think if he did that, it wouldn't surprise me, given the fact that he's made so many empty promises already. But I think, I'd like to think that he wouldn't put us in that position. But everything he's shown so far, this would not surprise me for it to go through, put it that way. But as I say, in terms of what 7-7 can actually offer us, I just don't see it. I think what they see, I see what we offer them. We offer them the potential for that stadium. If they can get hold of the football club and get the stadium, they won't care if Everton Football Club play it or not. They'll care about owning it. They'll care about having it and being able to asset strip it and do whatever they like with it. But certainly any money generated from that stadium won't be going to Everton Football Club. It will be going directly to the pockets of the people involved with 777. I almost feel like the football is a secondary problem for them. I don't see them, pumping money into the side and wanting us to be successful. They'll purely be looking at the assets and what they can get their grubby little mitts on. So yeah, it's not a. Unfortunately, they've got nothing positive to say about it.
I was waiting for it, mate. I was waiting for it.
The gang of charlatans. Yeah,
but do you know what though? Just quickly, that's the main worry for me, and it kind of has been all along since we've been building the new ground, that it won't be owned by Everton. And if it's not owned by Everton, as you say, Pete, the match day revenue doesn't all directly go to Everton. You know, we're going to have all those wonderful lounges and bars in this new ground. You know, it's going to be a place where it was built specifically to get people in early, to get people to leave late, to have that whole sort of match day experience. And if all that money isn't going to the club, what's the point? There's no point at all. And you kind of think that can be the only reason why anyone would want to invest in Everton at this moment in time. I think he said in the interview, didn't you, with James Corbett, Dave? You asked him why Everton, and
Yeah.
you know, that's the only thing the club's got going. All right, it's a big club, historic club, and all the rest of it. But when it comes down to it, that ground is what's going for it, really.
You don't think, like, I've always, I say, criticised fans. I've always thought on try to be a little bit more modern in how I think about this. But and you two will know much more than me about historically the way Everton have been. Back at the times when we've won things, back at the time when we've been a club that's amongst the best, given up, one of the first clubs to start in football in this country. I've always seen that, and I tend to say this quite a lot about sentiment with our football club. I completely understand why many people say that. Maybe I'm too young to be able to stick to that as you guys would. And you always bang on about the 80s Les and all that stuff, which is brilliant. But as a younger fan, which I say younger fan, I'm 35 years old now, but there's a lot younger fans than me who'll be in it with family and however they've been made and Evertonian from when they're little. I have so much sympathy for them, because they're seeing a position of this football club as if it's some sort of, I don't know, like Leeds got to, or like what happened with Portsmouth and Sunderland. To me, if I was a youngster looking at that and not bothering to look at what that previously happened with us, I'd be looking at that thinking, what is this shit show that I'm supporting here? And why why me? As you said, why Everton? I'd be saying that if I was a kid, thinking, what have you done to me, Dad, or your mum, or whoever's done that sort of thing. And I think many of us at times, you particularly, Pete, when it was a joke, and we did about how positive you normally are, you look at various points in the past years thinking, yeah, this is shit now, but it'll turn around. I remember when we first got Moyes, when Walter Smith first left, we got Moyes in. We had those couple of years that he came in that just about kept us up in the first season when he comes in the last few games, when Walter Smith left. But then what followed after that started to become what I always felt most fans of other clubs who succeeded felt. And you had that little bit of excitement. You had that excitement where Everton are going to get into a position here where they're able to win things. They're able to get to the latter stages of cups. Even the league, you're looking at top four. I think back to 2004, 2005, all of that. And, we still felt like massive underdogs at those points, but you started looking at the club thinking, we're definitely going somewhere now. I'd even go as far as what happened under Martinez when he came in too. When we got the players we wanted, when we got Stones and we had, Gareth Barry, Lukaku, and you're like, you talk about that. If nobody knew anything about football and you told them that, they'd be like, wow, Everton must have been brilliant at that time. But we had like one season and that was it. I'm banging on about this like it seems like, we're all outdone by and all that, which we are as a fan base. We are. We don't deserve what this football club's doing. We don't deserve, none of us deserve that as loyal Everton fans. But I can't these days, and this sounds really depressing, Les, I can't these days start thinking when this turns around, like those previous years, like even when we had the Johnson years and all that, there was always, Everton just needs someone to take them over, and then they'll be fine. Early 90s when the Premier League, we just didn't stick with everybody in the finances to come into football back then, and then we were always trying to chase that. But at the same time, all of that up until, like I mentioned, to the Martinez years, and then lo and behold, when Farhad Moshiri came in, let's all be honest, we thought we'd hit goals. We thought this was the time when everything changes. But you go up right now, and I'd say certainly since we had Ancelotti at least, which is a bit of a pipe dream when we look back, isn't it, that he came in, and COVID and whatnot. I look at the situation and think, this football club's never going to be the same again to what it was when it was a success, but it won't even be the same again as you're looking at this thinking, how do we get out of this? Where is the positivity going to come from? How on earth do you do this? Well, we're all sitting here banging away saying Moshiri's got to go, Kenwright's got to go, which is obvious. But what we've just all spoken about there with the new group taking us over, 777, which looked like has got an horrendous record, by the way. We're thinking, well, is that going to kick us further down the road? Is that going to kick us even further down? It's just going round in a circle that's basically just makes you feel insane at supporting this football club.
Yeah, I think when you've been beaten down in the last few years as much as we have, you sort of seen things and you think, okay, yeah, this will be sound now and it's anything but. It's impossible not to just feel complete despair with it all, isn't it? A lot of piss taken on Twitter saying like people are saying Farhad sell the club, oh, but not to them, which I kind of get because it's sort of like, well, you sort of want everything, don't you? It's like we want to sell the club, but not to them, no. But unfortunately, the position we're in, and I think I refer back to this James Corbett interview as well, is the fact that we are going to get the snide gambling and crypto companies coming after us. We're not at that level where we're an attractive proposition. So we are going to get, like, as Pete said, shysters like this coming in, looking to buy the club. But it's impossible not to feel, or I think it is anyway, completely down with it all. And just going back to just quickly on Ancelotti, looking back objectively, that was one of the worst decisions the club made. That, because it was just a microcosm of let's throw as much money at this as possible. And then when that money ran out and Ancelotti got off, that's when it really unravelled quickly. You know, it was sound at the time. We didn't get to enjoy it because we weren't allowed in the ground. But objectively, that was a pretty bad decision by the club because they didn't have the money to follow it through like they needed to. He needed pretty much unlimited funds there, and he would have been sound with us, I think. But we didn't have that, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it probably would have been right to get David Moyes back at that point. With hindsight, looking back now, it probably would. Because, you know, we could be in a position where Christ West Ham are right now. And it probably pains me to say that because I hate that backward looking thing with Everton. I hate the fact that, you know, when we get rid of a manager, Roberto Martinez is always in the frame, or David Moyes is always in the frame, because he said it is a very, very backward looking club and always has been. But yeah, it's hard not to feel completely despondent with it after the bad decisions that have been made time after time. And this feels like it could just be another one.
Well, you know, the interesting point you make there about Moyes, I think he's turning a lot of. I don't want to coin this saying because it was from him over the road, but he's turning doubters into believers. In terms of these days, you know, if he didn't have the history that he had when he left us and was a laughing stock at United, a laughing stock when he went over to Sociedad as well.
Yeah.
This is his second period of time at West Ham. But when you get to this point now, this is the time when he's hit it right. They went and won a trophy. And that club as well will be so high and what everything's going on there. What they had in the final, what they went and did in the third tier of European trophies, which everyone else is going to laugh at. Well, maybe we wouldn't laugh at that because we give anything for, but he'd gone and won a trophy, right? A European trophy at that. And you know, there'll be a minute, and you'll know this again, you guys, the European Cup Winners' Cup that we won, this is probably equivalent to that these days, in terms of you've gone out of a different tournament, so you get put into that. And, you know, I look at that with Moyes these days and what he's gone and done at West Ham. They've changed around. They're an awful, awful football club. Don't get me wrong, in the stadium that they've gone to and all that, it just feels like a wasteland. But he's put everything together, albeit with Kevin Nolan, who I can't stand as well. But he's done that with them and put them into a position we'd probably kill for right now, wouldn't we? So, but by saying about, I'd never have Moyes back as you're going back in time, I'd be happy to go back to the future if I'm honest with you, Pete.
Yeah. Well, that's it. I always remember the last season under Moyes. We'd actually started playing some really good football as well, by the way. I think his football was underappreciated. And I feel at that time we were all kind of ready to move on. I think we felt as supporters it had gone a bit stale. So when he was off to Man United, we got Roberto Martinez in. I think it was, you know, there's that thing about be careful what you wish for sort of thing. I always think about Everton. You know the way people talk about sliding doors moments, and you can go, or like, you know, the thing where you can turn left or turn right. That sliding doors moment. We seem to be on the bad end of every single one of them moments. There isn't really any time where you could say, well, it could have gone that way, but it went that way, where in a positive light. Other than like where we've had like, you know, random fight backs in last game of the season where we survived by the skin of our teeth. There aren't really too many where you could say, do you know what, we struck lucky there. Like something just went our way. And I just look at this situation now. And I'd give anything to go back to David Moyes and being the underdogs and signing players on the cheap and turning them into heroes. That was the Everton that I connected to the most, and it wasn't all about winning trophies. It's never been about winning trophies for me. That might sound defeatist to some people. That might sound like, I was born in the late '80s, so I never got to see it. Everton for me should be about fighting and giving absolutely everything for this club and that badge and that goes for everyone. That goes for the supporters. That goes for the players. That goes for the owners. We should all be wanting the same thing, which is for Everton to be successful and for Everton to just look like they give a shit. Like, that's what I want to see from my players. I want to see that passion and fight. I don't even need to see, Jude Bellingham getting signed or or Ronaldo or Messi. I don't need to see players like that. I need to see players who, as I say, just give a shit. And that goes for the owners as well. I don't think it's too much to ask for, to be honest with you. I don't expect trophies. We should expect success. John Moores said, Everton expects success. Evertonians expect success. I just expect us to fight and to give everything.
Scoring a goal now, mate.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah, scoring a goal would be great, wouldn't it? But as I say, me personally, I think I get the impression with this 777 thing, if it does go through, it's one final big fuck you from Mashiri and Bill Kenwright to say, you think we were bad? Wait till you get a load of these. So I don't think it's I don't think it's in their interest in their personal interest to sell us to anyone but whoever pays the most money. I think that they really would rather Everton Football Club was completely obliterated after they leave, so that they can at least turn around and say, well, we weren't as bad as these ones.
Yeah.
I mean,
But Bill Kenwright's thing has always been, well, I'm not Peter Johnson, basically, hasn't it?
Yeah.
He sort of came in and rescued the club, in inverted commas, from Peter Johnson, who was, he was a terrible owner. He was awful. The trophies thing, I agree, Peter. It's, there are people who think we should be winning trophies, but when you look at it, very few teams actually win trophies. It's pretty much the same teams over and over that win trophies, and we've not been that for a long, long time. And even when we have been that, it's been very sporadic throughout our history. But I think you're right. The one thing, without any sense of entitlement that we can expect is the bare minimum of a football club being well run.
Yeah.
And a football club buying decent players to fit, just to make a competent football team. I'm not talking world beaters, because no one should have that entitlement with the football team, because it's an unpredictable and a very cyclical game, which is becoming less cyclical and more predictable, to be honest. But I think the very least any football fan anywhere should be able to expect that their team is run properly by the people who are running it.
Yeah.
They've got a functioning football club. All teams are always going to get relegated. Teams are always going to get promoted. Teams are always going to be middling. You don't know where you're going to fall in that. But you should be able to go the game and have a nice match day experience, even if you get beat, before the game and that, and know that your club's well run and it's looked after and you're looked after and valued as a fan. And it just doesn't feel like that. And I think every fan anywhere is entitled to that, apart from maybe the Reds. But
no, I think that's an excellent point, though, because you think of our situation there, where people that think, who listen to this, who aren't Evertonians, think, oh, you're just trying to cry it in. You're trying to cry it in, saying how shit you are, because, or you just love to have a nice day at the grounds, and a nice day for your kids or whoever it is you take to the football, your friends, and have a nice day. You go for a pint after it, whatever. That sorts your Saturday out, and everyone loves the Saturdays like that. That's what I'll always remember. I feel really upset to say that I remember, because that's what it is these days, isn't it? Like you just said, Les, it feels like such a long way away since then. But I think that's so true with trophies now. That they become something that is, first of all, you're unable to do so, or 99.9% of clubs, most clubs, are unable to do so. I used to really, and it's quite ironic, this, I always used to highly criticise people who used to say, I'd like a cup run. We want a cup run. Like, what's the fucking point in a cup run? You either win it or you don't. I don't want a cup run. I see people going on about. Do you remember when we, what was it, 08, when we got to the semi-finals of the League Cup and we played the two legs against Chelsea, and we went down there and Yakubu scored one of the most favourite goals I've ever seen
Oh,
in an
I
Everton
was
shirt. He
there. I
absolutely,
was
I've
there.
never seen him hit
Oh,
I've never seen him hit a ball hit so hard that I think one of their players, whoever it was, had to duck their head because they were scared of it hitting them in the head. That day was amazing, and we lost the second one because I think Joe Cole scored at Goodison and they beat us 1-0. And that was a day when I went, that's fucking typical Moyes. That is absolutely David Moyes that we couldn't get past that when we came back. And if you remember, it's so Everton, if you remember, we got beat 2-1 at Chelsea. And it was
yeah.
because Sean Wright Phillips beat
Out
Tim
jumped.
Howard in the air.
Yeah.
I can't stand him out. But anyway,
And
those
Lescott.
And
moments.
Lescott as well, yeah.
Yeah. The what?
Lescott as well.
Lescott.
It's on the far post,
Yeah.
wasn't it, Lescott?
Oh, that was
Yeah.
right. Yeah, that's right. Oh, it's just infuriating that day. But I remember going off my head when the Cubans scored. I thought, yeah, that's Wembley. That's Wembley now. I need to go to Wembley. And then obviously it was 9 years before we got to go again with under Martinez. But those days that you're talking about, those are the days that I'm like, I cherish them now. And anyone else, like I said, anybody else who's listening to this who isn't an Evertonian will be thinking, you sad bastards. But I tell you what, if you have the touch or the taste of what we have these days, you completely understand what we're talking about here. And look, there's other people who'd say, well, that's not as bad as how we had it. Leeds fans, oh, that's not as bad. Portsmouth's probably the worst of them, aren't they? That ended over the years. Even Portsmouth won an FA Cup.
Well, that's it. Leeds got to a Champions League semi-final. Portsmouth won an FA Cup.
Yeah.
They all had like a little taste of success. Yeah. It's like been mid-table. And
but like you say,
we were pushing a little bit, but
yeah. But like the point you've made, I think is excellent because the equivalent of that these days is completely different. Getting to a cup semi, a cup final, and whatnot. The equivalent of that these days for a club in the position we are is what mid-table is having something that looks efficient. So one day we can look at it and think, do you know what? This club might look like it's going in the right direction. I remember watching things like, Sky Sports News or, Soccer AM when it was decent back in the day with Tim Lovejoy. And he'd get people on who say, oh, aren't Everton a brilliant club, the way they ran and all this? And Ken Wright's still sitting there. And I'm like, oh, it's really nice that you hear us getting these sort of mentions. So naive for me to think so, but as we didn't know what was to come. But when you see that, you think, oh, yeah, we are really well run. Look how we got into the top four. Look at the players Moyes gets. He doesn't spend much money, but he gets he starts getting diamonds like Lescott, like Kale, those days where we actually look like, wow, you can go and do that. The equivalent of that these days is probably, I don't know, to a higher extent, Brighton, even Brentford maybe.
But then you look at those two clubs, and they're two clubs who've been really well run, aren't they? They are two clubs who have got a blueprint for where they want to get to, and they're getting there. Brentford sort of that really popped when they moved into the new ground, didn't it? They obviously had a plan moving into the new ground,
yeah.
And then they've got in the Premier League, they've got the new ground with all the extra. It will be extra revenue for them that brings them what they had at Griffin Park, and now they're reaping the rewards of that, of having that plan in place. You kind of think with Everton, moving to this new ground, it's going to be like, well, what happens next? Like, there's not going to be a plan how we capture all this new revenue, what we do with it, how we sell the club, in this new stadium. It'll just be like, right, we're in the new ground, there we go, bring it on, and nothing will happen.
Well, it's really depressing to look at it when you think, well, we can all rave about going to Bramley-Moore. We can all talk about, where's our new seat going to be? We've got to go and pick our new seats. We've got the stone that we've got for the Blue Room is going to be put in there. And then, days out down there, walking into town. That's where we are now. If it's anything like that, that's just being ripped off us, ripped apart. And it's such a unrealistic show to think of how good Everton could be. But that's probably never going to happen in our lifetime.
Yeah, because of these clowns running
it. Do you say we're going off now? Or have we got 5?
No, 5 minutes.
Oh, I thought you meant like 5 seconds to
no,
change.
It's a 5-minute warning, sorry. Podcasting this,
do you know what? I always take the effort to try and delete these little things, but because Les has caused it, I'm not going to do that now. So,
It's my fault.
probably the first time ever on the weekly. He means 5 minutes until the break, and then we
Yeah,
come back on with
yeah,
the
we don't
second
do
half.
breaks on the week. We do, but for 5 minutes till the break.
I'll leave that on for two reasons. One, I just want to show Les off and that he's useless, and I want to show that I can't be asked.
I can't believe that Dave of all people is having a go at Les for timekeeping when apparently
It's a bit
6 o'clock
rum,
became 5 o'clock at some point today. But yeah,
I tell you what, mate. I remember Matt Jones, who when we started calling this and started like making the Blue Room. I used to have some horrendous times for him when we used to go into the Radio City Tower to record stuff, and he'd arrive there and someone would let him in and he'd be sitting there and we were going to do something at like 6 o'clock, and then sometimes, mate, and genuinely I'd get there at like 7 at night and he would be absolutely seething. You ask him about it these days. If I'm 5 minutes late, I think it's just because I used to do it previously. It isn't that bad if it was someone like yourselves, but because it was me that used to do it, he'd be in absolute fume right now.
Yeah, you think that 5 minutes is going to turn into an hour?
Yeah. Well, I hope it's just about now, hasn't it, Les? Are we close to it now? Are we?
We are. I'll tell you what. We'll go to the break now. So if you watch it on
There you
YouTube,
go.
there'll be a nice advert coming up.
You've coined how famous this is from the mailbag.
Yeah, well, it is. Yeah, this is standard mailbag procedure. You know, we have a break, and we don't know what's in the advert. Actually, when I was listening to the last one, the James Corbett one, I put an advert in the middle of that, and it was for Pampers nappies. Why am I getting adverts for Pampers nappies? No idea. Incompetent lads maybe if I understand,
themselves, though, aren't we?
but nappies not at all.
We do shit ourselves at this club.
We'll go to the break, and we'll see you in part 2.
Thanks for waiting for us to come back. Although it'll be about 5 seconds in your world. For us, we've been waiting about 5 minutes or so to go and get a glass of Coke or a bevy or something worse for the three of us. After the talk we just had there about what's going on with the football club financially. But thankfully, we're back to play games and play some football in the Premier League this weekend. Doesn't come much tougher, I think, on paper than the opponent that we've got. What's going on with Les's face there?
No, I'm just thinking about the weekend's game. That's all.
I thought you were doing it like. I thought you were just about to say to me, Dave, we haven't started recording now. When you've just come out with this intro.
I was just thinking, if we got it the weekend, I was thinking, yeah, we're at home. It's like, oh, shit, yeah, it's Arsenal.
Yeah, well, I think what many people would be thinking that we're going to talk about first of all is how we have a really good record against Arsenal at home. Dyche's first game, of course, wasn't it? When they came, we won that game, and obviously we didn't do great after it, but it seemed to be the thing that sparked up was actually staying in the Premier League. This is a different Arsenal. I know it was a different Arsenal last season. This year, it looked like they'd have kicked on a little bit more than obviously they got close. I say close-ish to win the league. Started to fall over towards the end with about 8 games left to go. They look like they've got the business again this year. They look like the players that we brought in look like quality players they've got. Given what we have coming back from an international break, we have seen loads of people raving about Onana and how we played, albeit against Azerbaijan the other night. Someone put one of them classic YouTube videos together where the player that you want looks like Pele, but he's playing against Azerbaijan. It was like us three up front for them or something. So I don't know whether to just take that with a pinch of salt, but it goes off on a bit of tangent this, but with Onana, I want to get your thoughts on him because first time you mention him or first time you see on Twitter with most of our fans, they're talking about a top-class midfielder, a potentially world-class midfielder because he's still a relatively young lad. And then people start saying, well, if you're going to sell him, he's a proper asset. We could probably get around £100 million for. I was talking to one lad the other day and I was like, that's not realistic whatsoever. You're not getting anywhere near that amount. And the reason why he said was we would pay £30 million for a player. If he's been in the Premier League, he's automatically going to go up by a price. That price is not getting anywhere near 100 million. That's what I'm thinking anyway. That's my opinion. Les, what would you agree with that?
Yeah, not at all. I think there was when the Chelsea were going nuts in the transfer market in the summer, you were kind of thinking, well, if we got 60, 70, 80 million for him, maybe we'd be doing well. There's no way he's £100 million player. He should be doing more for me, and I might get stick for this because I've sort of said the same. I think in in the comments on YouTube, actually, people have come back to me and said, he's only a young lad. He's, it's his first sort of full season and that. But for me, he's 22. He's got, we said this time and again, haven't we? He's got all the attributes he wants in a really good, like, midfielder that can do a little bit of everything. For such a tall player, he's pretty shit in the air, which is like one of the first things that strikes me. He's terrible in the air. But I just think he needs to impose himself more now. He seems like a confident player. He seems like a confident lad. So it can't be a confidence thing. I just don't think he does enough to like impose himself on games, which, that in itself could be cliched because of the sort of stature of player that he is, 6'3" or whatever, really rangy, can get up the pitch really quickly, can tackle well. And you kind of think, well, if he's got all that, he should be doing more. Now, he might do as the season goes on, but yeah, for me, I think he's got to do more, and he's never £100 million player. Plus, also with the age thing, he's 22 now, and this is where players have really got to start kicking on. We've seen it enough at Everton, haven't we, where we bring players through, and if they haven't made it by 22, if they're not doing the business by that age, they go. And he's at that age really where he needs to start doing that, I think.
The caveat to that, Pete, for me is that look who's around him, first and foremost, is what I'll be looking at. Because it's somewhere in between, I think we mentioned this before, it's somewhere in between that he's not kicking on, like Les says there, but he's got nobody assisting what you'd want him to do as a midfield player. So, I'm twixt in between thinking that it's overly critical to say that this lad needs to do a lot more. I think that simplistically is right. I think we do need to see more from him. Certainly, I think players who come to a weak club, which is what we are, players like him, who you've paid that much money for, firstly, and has got that sort of reputation that he's come to us with, when we first see him, we think, wow, this lad's going to be really, really good for us. There is a particular minimum that you need to get from him. I take that into complete account. But then when I look what's going on around him, I'm not trying to be overly critical of those. In fact, I am really. I will go in on them. We've basically got a load of shit around them. I don't get his role at times. I don't get where Dice is intending that he plays. I mean, I'd like to see somebody ask him this, the pressers or whatever, to say, well, what is the role you're intending for him to have? Because either you're doing something massively wrong as the manager, or he's not doing what you're telling him to do. And I'm probably looking more to the form than that, if you get what I mean, because there's no way you'd still be playing him if he was doing dramatically what you're telling him to do. He's doing it completely wrong, if you get what I mean.
Yeah.
So I have a bit of sympathy with him, but then I'm thinking, well, you pay the price for a player that you want to do that well for you. If he's the player that you've bought, regardless of what's around him, his standards still need to be as high as what you've bought, really. So that's why I think people will be 50-50 with him, completing what Les was saying there too. Well, everyone's shit around him, so what do you expect from him? What are you taking that?
Yeah, I think I've said before that if you have one of those little grabbing machines and you picked him up and then you dropped him into Man City, I think he'd be incredible. I think with us, given the situation that we've been in, I don't think we've seen anywhere near the best of him. I think the fact that he's got a reputation for how much potential he's got in world football, he's seen as someone who could potentially go to the very top, if you like, in terms of his position. One thing that, again, I have to fully agree with you is in terms of his role in the team. I just don't quite understand what his role is, because he doesn't. I can see that he's a very tidy player. I can see he's got, obviously he's got bags of energy. I think sometimes he can go missing for large parts of the games. I think a lot of the time as well, you see him try passes or try to do things, and the players around him genuinely just aren't on the same wavelength as him. I think another thing as well, that one of the reasons why I think he will improve this season is something which, again, I've been banging on for ages, is that it helps midfielders to have proper forwards to to play their passes to, and proper wide men to play their passes to. I think that a lot of our issues in terms of how our players have performed, is because we've been screaming out for proper centre forwards and players who are gonna occupy defenders in the final third. So I think now that we've got Beto in, now that we've got even Schmidt, now that we've got Danjuma, now we've got players who will actually put defenders on the back foot. I think we will see the best out of the likes of Onana. I think we'll see goals from Decore, because I just think that we've now got a formidable strike force, or so certainly ones who can actually potentially score goals, which would be nice, wouldn't it? Considering the alternative from last season was 9 times out of 10 it was Neil Maupay, who I hate. I don't want to twist the knife. Certainly, he's gone. He's sort of gone out on loan now, so I feel like I need to give him a bit of a break. But he was nowhere near the standard that we needed. Nowhere near. And again, in the type of system that we were playing, he was just totally the wrong fit. It was totally wrong. And as I say, I think that has an impact on the players around him as well. And I think that Amadou Onana in particular has probably suffered with that. Because I do see flashes from him. I see glimpses from him where I think that, where it's the sliding doors moment where you think, well, that was a great pass, only if, that person would have made the run, or if we had someone there. I saw a lot with Iwobi as well. When you look at these stats that people throw out to me about Iwobi, maybe I'm slightly harsh on him because, again, if we had proper forwards playing with him, ironically, now we finally got some through the door. He's off, or he's left. But yeah, I again, Onana, I think, is one to come back to in a few months' time and see how he's getting on. Now we've actually made some decent signings. I think that I think that I keep saying about. I think I keep saying, sorry about that, my dog's just jumped up. I think I keep saying about how I'm not losing the plot just yet in terms of, I'm not hitting the panic button just yet. I think that we'll be okay. I think that, the Arsenal game is obviously a massive test for us, but do you know what? Stranger things have happened. We've started seasons off really slowly before, and it tends to be when the big guns come to Goodison Park that the place kind of lights up. It'll be interesting to see what the atmosphere is like on Sunday. I'd like to think that we could produce the kind of atmosphere that put the fear of God into Arsenal last time we played them at Goodison Park. It's a strange one for me. We might just be the team. Put it this way, I don't think Arsenal will be looking forward to coming to Goodison on Sunday. I think Arsenal will be coming to Goodison Park on Sunday and thinking that they're in for a tough game. I don't think any of those teams like coming to Goodison Park. So I think, on paper, maybe we haven't got a chance, but stranger things have happened. I mean, at the end of the day, Mexico have just announced that they found 2 aliens, 2,000-year-old aliens, and brought them out on camera. So stranger things will have happened this week than us beating Arsenal.
The other thing for me about Saturday, about Sunday, is that it's such a shame that it's gone from our 5 on Saturday to our 4 on Sunday.
Yeah.
That instantly impacts the atmosphere for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Sunday's an absolute stinker. Absolute stinker. Our 4 Sundays are probably the worst. You can get any time on. Well, early. I put Sunday as the worst. I put that as the worst above early kickoff on a Saturday.
Oh, defo.
You need 3 o'clock Saturday. I don't mind 5:30 as much on a Saturday. Monday football. If you offer me Monday football, late Saturday and any time Sunday, I'd probably take Monday night football ahead of any of them. To be honest, it's funny how the mentality works with that, though, Les, isn't it?
Yeah, I had my Saturday all boxed off, so going to see Everton 5:30 on Saturday. Then I'm going around your neck of the woods in Bootle on Saturday night to see Professor.
What are you going to Bootle for, Les?
Neptune Brewery in Bootle, I think it is. To see a band.
Yeah, it is.
Professor Yaffle's playing, yeah.
Oh my word! I can't believe you're setting foot in Bootle.
I know.
Not to say that my Bootle's bad. It's more like you're coming. We're stepping ourselves down to allow you into Bootle, mate.
But it was looking though. I didn't realise Bootle's that big. So that's up towards Fazakerley, isn't it? That part is it.
Bootle's near Fazakerley.
Is that part? I thought Bootle was just that little bit down the front.
No, Bootle's a part of Sefton.
Way up into town like that, yeah. So.
Well, I say we. I haven't lived in Bolton. I haven't lived in Bootle for like what, 18 years, something like that. But I still class it as home, mate. But when you're down there, make sure you go to George Jerry's on
H.C. Road. Yeah, get a kebab.
How many
Yes,
times have I
I
told you
will
about
do
that
that on the
place?
way home.
Please
Definitely.
do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's probably
Drop
right
one off at
actually.
my dad's for me, Les, on the way
What's
back.
that? Yeah, all
Drop one off at
right.
my dad's in Exactly on the way back.
I'm telling you, I should get paid for this actually, but
Do
the
I say Dave
finest.
sent me? Got a
Yeah,
discount.
do that, mate. They probably charge you more, to be honest with you. I go there that often. They'll probably say, "Where's your 20 quid?" But yeah, I don't even know how we got to that conversation. But anyway, the one sort of final thing to head towards the end, and we talked about this quite a bit a couple of weeks ago. Me, Matt, and Warren was about Jordan Pickford, and I went quite hysterical over how he's treated and how other people treat him. And so we see again there was some punter of a journalist said on Twitter the other day. I don't know if you've seen this because I quote tweeted him. He said that they've only received there's only been 2 shots given against on target against England since the World Cup quarter-finals against France. I don't really. This can't be true. Put it that way. But they even see that England have conceded 2 goals. They only conceded 2 shots, and everyone else missed. And obviously Jordan Pickford is in goal, so he should be saving just the 2 shots. Basically, it's an entire twist
Yeah.
to stick the knife into Jordan Pickford, you know, and it pissed me off because the point I then made was those 2 goals came against the best of the 2 teams in the group, which is Italy and Ukraine the other day. First of all, you'd have to look closely at the actual shots themselves and then say, should he save that?
Yeah.
No, he shouldn't. He shouldn't if you look at them. But the other side of it is that could be us going on Twitter and going crazy saying how amazing he is as a goalkeeper because he kept clean sheets against like the 3 worst clubs that barely kick a ball in the division. So first of all, I have no interest whatsoever in the Euro 2024 qualifiers. I don't particularly care what's too much at all about international football unless our players, and I don't even include Jordan in that, the likes of what I said about Onana and things like that. You start seeing things on there that impress you. You start thinking, well, when he comes back to the club, maybe that's a positive thing to throw at them. Other than that, don't really care. But it added to what we spoke about in the last weekly with the hatred that's sort of thrown towards a lad that's from a working class environment in Sunderland. You get, and I said to this fella, you get the Newcastle thing, much the same way we get the Liverpool thing.
Mm.
I mean, the language that goes towards him by that is horrible anyway. But aside from that, the open criticism to him is just bizarre, and I don't understand why. Yes, he's the England goalkeeper, but he's been an outstanding England goalkeeper to the point where I've looked at him at England and thought, I wish he played like that for us. You know, that's how good he's been for England, but yet that's where people criticise him the most.
Well, he did enough of the Euros to win it.
Yeah, yeah.
You save 2 penalties in the shootout, and you don't win that tournament. As a keeper, you're going spare on that. I think. I mean, just to talk about like journalists and that. A Dutch journalist today was talking about Pickford ruining Van Dijk's career. It's been how long, mate? You know,
A what journalist? A butcher?
A Dutch journalist.
Today.
Butcher. No, that's Jordan Pickford, isn't it? Yeah, talking about how he ruined his career. It's like, but I think Matt Jones had the perfect riposte, didn't he, to that journal. He said, for context, it's 5 goals conceded for Ramsdale from his last 5 shots on target. It faced in an England shirt, and Scotland even had an effort on target tonight. So I think if you look at the Pickford Ramsdale thing,
class, isn't it? Yeah, classic Matt Jones. That. What are your thoughts, Pete?
Well, didn't Ramsdale? Who was it where Ramsdale conceded like 4 or 5?
It's Hungary one.
Was it Lithuania or someone random? Check that for me, because
I think it was Hungary, wasn't it?
Or was it England got absolutely
conceded 5?
I'm sure it was it 5 4-0, yeah. And the thing about it as well is that goalkeepers always come in for criticism, obviously, because if you make a mistake as a goalkeeper, inevitably it's a goal. You know, you don't tend to get away with things. What annoys me with Pickford the most is that he's getting criticised when he hasn't made mistakes. And so he like that's what he's done. They've twisted the narrative by saying the last 2 shots he's faced on target have been goals. Well, it doesn't take into context either goal. Like Dave said, if you look back at the goals, I don't think you can blame Jordan Pickford for either of the goals.
Well, this is exactly what I said to that fellow. why aren't you blaming the two centre-half defenders who've let the shots in? You know, the
Yeah,
same way as like if you look back on our last game against Sheffield United, the two goals we concede, how many times we bang on about Patterson? I was criticising Tarkovsky for both of them because he didn't throw a challenge in. But you know, you get fans laughing their heads off that Pickford scored an own goal, diving at it, and then even still, when he goes into those miraculous saves at the very end that we don't lose the game, people, oh, he should have saved that. He should have saved that anyway. If it went in, it'd be his
Oh
fault.
yeah, one journalist said, "What if he'd pushed it under his bar?" Well, he didn't. So
but the other thing as well. The other thing as well, this narrative. I mean, I know that you sort of said, "I wish you played like that for Everton," but on a serious note, it's the narrative that like it's this false narrative that he's absolutely awful for Everton,
yeah,
and then goes away to it, and it's almost as if that's again like an attempt to push the narrative that he's not very good because look at him every week for Everton. He's been our player of the season he's kept us in the Premier League almost single-handedly for the last 2 years, and he's still getting his criticism. Lee Dixon is the one as well. I always remember the World Cup, and after he saved a penalty against Colombia, and Lee Dixon, it was like through gritted teeth that he had to. Whenever he commentates on him, he's got a real serious agenda against him. And I'm not quite sure what it is, whether it's the Arsenal thing because he thinks he wants Ramsdale to be there. But to be honest, it goes back to before then.
Well, that Colombia game, sorry, Pete, he made that magic save, didn't he?
Yeah.
When he tipped it around the post.
Bin,
yeah. Shouldn't have saved it because he scored off the corner after. It's like, what happens to people when they're talking about him?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because he said it was going wide. It was like, well, it clearly wasn't for one. Oh, it might have, it might have just hit the post. Well, what? So yeah, but again, it comes down. If he was the goalkeeper for Manchester United, putting in the same performances that he does for us week in, week out, he wouldn't be getting this criticism. That's what it comes down to. You've just got to, and I'm not just saying that just because it's Everton. If he was playing for Brentford, and people didn't like him, it's just the way the world works.
Yeah,
there are favourites in the media, there are favourite teams in the media, there are favourite players in the media. There's like the press at the moment are all twerking for Newcastle and Arsenal, aren't they? So what the narrative they want to push is that Ramsdale or Nick Pope, he's nowhere near Jordan Pickford. And also you've got to bear in mind that Gareth Southgate clearly looks at Jordan Pickford and the way he wants to play football, he wants to play it out from the back. Like Ramsdale is not capable of doing it. The lad has more, the lad falls asleep more often than I can't even think. I can't even think of my words now.
No, but the other thing about it that we spoke about was the social class kind of thing against him.
Yeah.
Because like when people say, "Oh, look at him, he goes mad and he starts kicking off and all that." First of all, I think he massively has changed in terms of his own mentality, the way he goalkeeps now. You don't see him doing the usual screaming at people. You'll see him doing what you need him to do as a goalkeeper, saying, why hasn't anyone blocked that shot and things like that. That's everything a normal goalkeeper do. I get what people have said and we've said, haven't we? He's got a hot head. He needs to calm down. I think he's done that lately, Les, in the last couple of years. Certainly enough to keep us up anyway. But then, they're the other things we were referring to is like, he's a working class lad from Sunderland. That seems to give people a different impression of him than if he was a Ramsdale. He's come from Sheffield down to Arsenal. He's in London. It definitely feels like there's some sort of issue between that sort of class thing. Because the first thing I think many people will think of him, certainly like they would with lads from our neck of the woods where we all are. You make it. You look at Anthony Jordan, maybe. Anthony Gordon. I wish we had Anthony Gordon. Anthony Gordon, you think of that and you think, he's a little shitty scouser. He's gone up to Newcastle. That's what the criticism's going to get like mostly from other clubs. I know he gets it from us, but we've got different reasons. That kind of thing where you've got kids from a local estate who go and make it as a professional footballer. First thing a lot of people tend to go to is that.
Yeah.
It seems to be the thing where they've taken the piss out of them because they've come from a working class environment.
Well, the flip side of that is there's far too many players with double barrel names now.
Yeah.
It's, that needs to stop. It's becoming like a middle class game. Yeah, there is. I think there is that. I think there is
Like
that.
we're all watching the Rugby World Cup. Like, do you not see that the other day in the WhatsApp group in our Blue Room WhatsApp group where there's what about a dozen people in it? I put, is everyone looking forward to watching the Rugby World Cup? No one replied. Nobody replied. Not like, yeah, you're definitely Tory Dave, you aren't you? I was like, no, I'm not a rugby fan at all, but it's the World Cup. I'm going to get into it. Do you know what I mean? Like many people with the radical, I'm not going to go down golf because people absolutely destroy me over golf. But anyway, that kind of thing went off on a tangent there. But that sort of thing with Pickford, I have a lot of sympathy with the lad. You know, Pete.
Yeah, I do. Sorry, there's absolute mayhem going on in this house at the moment, which is why I'm getting a little bit distracted.
Pickford in there.
It's probably like a bit of an analogy of what goes on in his mind. Sometimes it's just absolute madness. There's a dog running
Yeah,
around, barking everywhere. My family's downstairs causing a racket. It's great. Um, but yeah, I do think that this thing about Jordan Pickford, this obsession with him, a lot of it is to do with it's classism. It's the thing. It's again, it's the fact that you've got people looking down the nose at this lad. I think that because of his personality as well, he's got a lot of personality. I don't think that's something that should be frowned upon. I don't think that's something he should it's a stick to beat him with. I think it's
yeah,
great that he's got personality. Look at the best goalkeepers have always been a bit nuts, haven't they? Even Neville Southall. Neville Southall was absolutely. Remember the time when he sat on his post that he didn't go in for the half-time team talk and just sat there leaning against his post because he was fuming at his back four. The goalkeepers are notorious for being a little bit nuts, and I think it should be embraced and I think it should be celebrated.
yeah,
I just think that this motive that people have ulterior motive that people have got against Jordan Pickford, it's a disgrace, to be honest with you. It's an absolute disgrace. And the
mm,
thing is that it's a little bit, people say that they talk about whipping boys, don't they? There's always someone to try and blame. They always pick up on someone. Once Pickford eventually isn't England's number one, I'm sure they'll move on to the next one. Once Ramsdale makes his inevitable mistakes or Nick Pope makes his inevitable mistakes, they'll get away with the first few. But eventually
yeah,
it'll become the next big thing, and then people will be looking back at it saying, "Oh, what? Bring Pickford back in. Bring Pickford back. You never
yeah,
got these mistakes with Pickford." And all of a sudden, now the narrative will change. You've seen it. Harry Maguire's another one. Harry Maguire's getting absolutely slated. He's being made out to be a clown. Harry Maguire is not a bad defender. He's not a bad footballer. He isn't the type of defender who can. He's not a. How do we put it? I wouldn't have him as a top class centre half. But I don't think the fella, other than the own goal he scored last night against Scotland in a friendly, it's very rare that he lets England down. But he's another player who gets beaten with this stick and gets labelled.
yeah,
As I say, once Maguire and once Pickford are out of the England side, they'll move on to the next ones and they'll
yeah,
start hammering them. I remember David Beckham. David Beckham got absolutely after the World Cup. He rightly so got criticised, but the criticism went beyond just getting sent off in the World Cup semi-final. He was getting death threats. He was having he was having effigies of his with his shirt on, getting burnt. He was getting booed for years until he scored that goal against Greece. And up until that point, he was getting slated by everyone. But then all of a sudden, he was a national hero again.
yeah, yeah,
It's all about narratives. And the other thing as well is that sometimes people like a comeback as well, don't they? And I think Jordan Pickford, I think he needs to hold his head up and he needs to crack on. As I say, he's a bit nuts anyway, so I don't really think it bothers him. I think he's just tries to carry on. I think Sean Dyche as well. I think Sean Dyche has recognised the fact that maybe he was getting a little bit too distracted. He was maybe being a bit too vocal, possibly
yeah,
giving him, taking the captaincy off him. That might be, psychologically to sort of say to him, listen, you need to concentrate on your job. Let someone else concentrate, i.e. Tarkovsky and Seamus Coleman. Let them concentrate on giving the instructions. Let's not, let's not give you that extra little bit of added, pressure or
mm,
distraction. Maybe that's what Dyche has done by doing that rather than it being a demotion. It's more like, to try and sort of take the pressure off him slightly. and maybe just get him to concentrate a bit more on what he needs to do. But I think Jordan Pickford, top class goalkeeper. Don't care what anyone says.
Yeah. Well,
oh, and Lee Dixon can do one as well, by the way, after all that. Lee Dixon can absolutely do one.
Yeah, Lee Dixon probably around Goodison on Sunday as well. But yeah, Everton back in action this Sunday. And like I said at the start, we've got a couple of really interesting interviews coming up that myself and Matt are going to be doing over the next couple of days regarding the ownership, the potential takeover, investments, whatever happens with 777 or 999, which it may end up to be on the outside Bramley Moor. Thanks as always for listening to us. You know, we've got bags of stuff both on our Patreon and on the free stuff that we do. And yeah, stay in touch. Do give us your comments. And as you know, it's at the Blue Room EFC on Twitter. We've got an email address. We've got a website. You know where it is. Speak to us whenever you want. And we'll be back soon. Up the toffees.